All right, so to practice AHIMSA, we want to take a look at a couple things. In yoga, there's a common concept called from the gross to the subtle. And we'll use that to evaluate your actions, your speech, and your thoughts. But in addition to that, we want to look at something called the inside-out approach. The inside-out approach says that we have to work on ourselves first, and then we could eventually turn that outward to then begin to impact other relationships. So with the inside-out approach, we want to address 5 different types of relationships. So your intrapersonal relationship is the technical term. It's your relationship with yourself. And then we turn that out to your familial relationships. And then we move on to your vocational relationships. And then to your relationships with the community at large, which is called your communal relationships. And then lastly, the last jump or the last hurdle here is the most challenging. It's your antagonistic relationships. So we'll go through those, and I'll loop back to give you some ideas on what they are. But for now, I want to focus in on your personal relationship, your relationship with yourself. So to begin to practice AHIMSA, we have to look at your thoughts, your speech, and your actions. And your thoughts are something that we generally become identified with over time. And as you put your thoughts into your speech, as you begin to utilize your speech, it makes it more solid. It puts it out into the universe, so to speak. And then finally, as you begin to act on it, it really makes your thoughts concrete. From your thoughts comes your speech and then your actions. So when we look at the context of your relationship with yourself, your personal relationship, we want to take a look at your actions first and then back into your thoughts. So if you are in the habit of harming yourself, you have to stop immediately. You have to heal the wounds, so to speak, and create new patterns, new habits. And just because, a lot of times we may discount the idea that, you may look at this and say, you know what, I don't physically harm myself, let's move on. But I would encourage you to think deeply here. It's not just, do you physically harm yourself? We want to also take a look at, do you put yourself in harm's way? And do you take unnecessary risk? A couple of things that you can look at is, consuming alcohol, if it's this habit or if it's a large amount at the same time, or smoking. It's physically damaging yourself. Beyond that, you could take a look at gambling, taking unnecessary risk, or too much responsibility all at the same time. These are all different ways that a lot of times we end up hurting ourselves, and it's a bit unnecessary. It's a failure to practice AHIMSA. Moving on to your speech, it's important to take note of how you speak to yourself and how you speak about yourself. So it's very common to speak poorly of yourself, and it becomes a bad habit over time in various circumstances, especially when we are challenged or if we fail to do something, if we're just simply not good at something. It's pretty common for somebody to say something under their breath about themselves, like, oh, I'm such an idiot, or I'm such a klutz, things like that. You have to begin to pay attention to these small things because they are very powerful. We need to stop condemning ourselves and start congratulating ourselves and treating ourselves with more respect. As you move on into your thoughts and your thought patterns, first things first, we have to acknowledge that, what I said before was that we get in the habit of becoming attached to our thoughts. And what I mean by that here is that at times, if you can just review your thought patterns throughout the day, you may acknowledge some thoughts as good, some thoughts as bad. And if you have bad thoughts, oftentimes you may feel guilty or evil to some degree, or inadequate at times. It's important to note that they're just thoughts. They come and go. It's very normal to have a wide range of different processes go on. and to not hold them so closely, not hold them because they're just thoughts and they come and go. If you hold on to them, that's really the problem, not whether or not you had a good thought or a bad thought. The real trick here is to acknowledge, I guess, to ask yourself one simple question. Is the thought useful or is it not useful? That's the only evaluation that's necessary, not whether it was good or bad. So if it's useful, then that's great, then we can use it. And if it's not, then you can just let it go. Practicing that rather than evaluating the good or badness of a thought will help you sharpen something called your higher discernment, or just sharpen your decisiveness. Be able to know that this thought was useful, and so then you can use it. It's a tool. So those are some of the steps that you can take in your personal relationship or your intrapersonal relationship. So following the inside-out approach, we move from the intrapersonal, and then we start moving outward. So that second layer is called your familial relationships. Now, for some people, you don't have this wide array of family, and that's okay. So think a little bit broadly about what a familial relationship is. One of my favorite exercises is to just take a moment and acknowledge the 5 most influential, or I guess the 5 closest people to you, whoever those people are. Now, typically, those 5 people you are very reflective of. And so they contain pieces of you, your personality, your behavior. If you think about it in those terms, think about those people as your familial relationships, the closest people that you have to you, the people that you can trust with a lot. That's the testing ground to most of your relationships. They trust you and they give you a lot of grace. You know them very well. And so those are the people that you want to begin to work with your non-harming, with your actions in the same way, physical actions, whether it's putting them in danger, taking unnecessary risks, and respecting their time. There's your speech, being careful of what you say, how you say things, whether it's a joke or not, to keep it very positive and uplifting. And then, of course, your thoughts. Moving on from your familial relationships, we go into your vocational relationships, which means your work and people at your work. Finding ways to collaborate with each other, never kind of butting people out or taking the credit for somebody else's work, things like that. Moving from vocational, we want to go into your communal relationship. This is where it becomes much more broad. We get into a place where you can work with your relationships with the community at large, through your actions, your thoughts, and your speech, of course. And then finally is your relationship with your adversaries, or your adversarial relationships, which means the people that you're competitive with, or the people that you disagree with more often than not. So we want to find ways to work with them, and I think that it's a very common principle in most belief structures to love your enemy, to find ways to collaborate with your adversaries. A really important concept here, and that you can use in your relationships with all of these different levels, is that the different emotions associated with AHIMSA, or harming, are like hate, anger, jealousy, greed, contempt, and all these very low and heavy feelings. Having those feelings and acting on them, especially through actions or speech, but certainly just harboring those thoughts, is like ingesting poison, and yet you expect the other person to suffer. The truth of the matter is, you will be the one who suffers if you ingest that poison.